Well, thank you so much for taking the time to attend the EnergyBiz Leadership Forum and participating and having some great conversations. I just wanted to talk with you a little bit more about some of the challenges and opportunities that are going on in the power industry and the role of federal governments and different governments out there in helping utilities overcome some of those challenges. So, so really to start out with, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities that you're seeing in the power industry at a national level, and how is that different or similar to what's going on in Austin?
Well, it's there's lots of similarities, but there's lots of differences as well. I mean, just the fundamental business models can be so different. Austin happens to be a municipally owned utility. We're part of the Texas ERCOT grid, so not even part of the eastern or western U.S. grid. There's a series of sort of ownership and regulatory layers that vary from utility to utility, from geography to geography. So it's a discouraging thing, frankly, is just how incredibly diverse is the structure, fundamental operating structure that utilities face across the country. The good news is there's just so much attention being paid to all of the issues. The state of the infrastructure of our grids is generally so poor that people are trying to focus on that again. The whole concept of our carbon emissions as a piece of our fuel sources, different utilities, finally has the awareness that I think it needed to have from an environmental standpoint. Everybody's trying to focus on efficiencies and affordable, reliable power as seemingly as demand per capita perhaps grows. So it's lots of encouraging things are happening. But at the same time, the more you learn about just the state of the industry and how sort of diverse and decentralized and seemingly at times, differently organized at least, it can be discouraging too. But plenty of opportunity out there, and it's fun to see new products being delivered. It's fun to see just new intellect involved in the industry and new leadership from a regulatory, governmental standpoint. So it's an exciting time to be in the energy industry. Yeah,
it definitely is. Now, yesterday you had talked about Austin Energy and some of the things you're doing. You had the old coal site that that you ended up putting some
a solar field on,
and looking at that district chilling and all that. So I mean, it seems like Austin's been very innovative and very interested in moving forward with a lot of these more advanced energy opportunities. I mean, what do you see the role of federal government being, given that, there are cities like Austin that are certainly ready to move ahead, but other cities that are a little bit more reluctant?
Well, it's so hard to try to extrapolate, the philosophy of a municipally owned utility. Austin's, I think, is lucky. Austin is lucky that we have a relatively young, educated, environmentally conscious citizenry, right? The voters ultimately are our ratepayers, who are our bosses as a muni. I mean, the mayor of the city council or the board of directors of a pretty large, pretty complicated electric utility. And so Austin is fortunate, leadership at Austin Energy is fortunate that you have that sort of ownership structure, if you will, and sort of inherent internal regulatory structure. So our ratepayers, citizens, taxpayers, sort of expect a national leading green choice program, or cutting edge technology, or spending more money on conservation than on generation, sort of thing. But it's really hard to take that kind of sort of ownership model and extrapolate it to a federal level. I mean, there's there's dozens and dozens of utilities just in Texas. Some, many of them are investor-owned utilities. A handful are municipally owned. There's a bunch of cooperative rural electric ownership structures just in Texas. And so it's again the myriad of ownership structures and regulatory layers across the country is so complicated. I would suggest that it argues for a more visible federal presence. But at the same time, there's a lot of just sort of political pushback to having, if one suggests you should have more, federal authority or regulatory power over certain industries.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've seen, the federal government obviously get interested with some of the stimulus spending and helping different utility companies move forward with some projects that they may not have done otherwise. I mean, do you see that making sense and being a good approach, or what are some challenges with that?
Well, I was so pleased to see how big a role energy played in the stimulus package. I know this, the stimulus package in general was controversial, seemingly, in different quarters of the country, but ultimately this gigantic swath of that big federal infusion was energy related. Everything from energy efficiency block grants to local governments that, as the old chair of the U.S. Conference of Mayors Energy Committee, we worked on for years. Everything from that to and through smart grid initiatives all across the country. Austin Energy got a $10 million smart grid grant to work on. So I was just pleased to see how how large a portion of the stimulus spending was energy related, and so that's a great start. And I hope it sets the stage for Congress and just future appropriations to have more attention paid to energy than not. Until recently, so 1978, U.S. Department of Energy was spending $6 billion a year on clean energy R&D, renewable R&D. By 2008, 30 years later, that had dropped to $2 billion. So 30 years later, spending 1/3 as much as we spent in the 70s on fundamental R&D for renewables is just, no wonder we're sort of in the state that we're in right now. But I think the stimulus package really did quickly, just overnight, change that math, the monetary math at least, and I hope it sets the stage, for continued disproportionate, federal attention to energy.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Pleased to be here. Great crowd, great conference, and hope to be back soon.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.